Hey, how you doing? Today I'll be working on this 1/6 scale model of Winry Rockbell by CA 3D Studios. There'll be no yapping today, but some real quick housekeeping. I would like to post links to the stuff that I use in my videos, but YouTube apparently needs to verify that I'm not a bot. Can you believe they asked me for my left kidney and my firstborn just to prove that I'm human? It was either that or I wait around 2 months. I think I'll go with waiting. I got some feedback on my last video about my glamour shots being a little too dark, and looking back I agree. Hopefully they're better now, and you bear with me as I learn how to make better videos. Some other feedback I got was from my old lady. Hold on, let me find my phone to quote her properly. You're a little rushed, a little higher pitched than your normal voice. It's a customer service voice, I think. To be fair to her, I told her I thought I sounded unnatural, so we'll see how this is now. Making these videos has shown me I do a lot of dumb things. I did something I knew I shouldn't. Even while doing it, I was like, I should stop doing this. But I did it anyways. I decided it was a fantastic idea to use my Dremel on the tails of the bandana. It was not, and I knew it wasn't. This caused a piece of it to break off and rocket into my face. So, I want to take a moment to talk about the importance of safety equipment. I have ventilation for the resin dust, and I'm wearing a respirator the entire time so I don't cook my lungs. As I'm using a rotary tool, I also wear eye protection, which saved me from getting hit in the eye by the resin shrapnel. Priming is super easy on this one. I remember how much I hate the gray primer this time, so I just hit everything with black primer from Vallejo and call it good. I put most of my model together before I do my zenithal highlight so it looks uniform, before I take my white ink from Liquitex. Whoops, lost a leg there. As I was saying, before I take my white ink from Liquitex and spray from above. This is a great way to get shadows, as you'll see later on when we get to the painting. I do the same thing for the other parts that aren't put together. For the gloves, I do focus on the front of the hand and leave the palms basically black to reinforce the shadows. I also spray the entirety of her hair white to set up for the yellow paint later on. I wanted to try out dry brushing directly on the base after doing the zenithal highlights, instead of putting down a base coat. I went with medium flesh tone from Vallejo as it was the lightest brownish color I had for the planks. I didn't like how this looked, so I came in with Reikland flesh shade to give me more of a uniform color. I think this probably could work on a rock base, so I'll probably try it again. To separate some of the planks at the front of the base, I use Agrax Earth Shade from Citadel between each plank. For the crate, I dry brushed Green Ochre from Vallejo. I ended up coming in with Skeleton Horde from Citadel, as the dry brushing was too streaky for my liking, and it covered most of that up. Once again, I grabbed some Agrax Earth Shade, this time I used it for shading on the crate. On the suitcase, I decided to use Gal Vorbrax Red from Citadel. It's a darker color than the render, but I thought it would fit well with the rest of the base. I didn't film this, but I used silver from Proacryl on the locks for the suitcase, and bronze from Vallejo on the hinges and rivets. These accursed little ropes for the crate. At first I lost them, and I was like, damn. But I ended up finding them, and I was like, oh sick, I don't have to reprint it. Only to then realize they were broken, so I had to reprint it anyways. For the ropes, I used snakebite leather from Citadel and went heavier on the bottom to act as a shadow. For the pants, I used Skeleton Horde, and like I was saying earlier, the zenithal I put down is coming in clutch right now. It's giving us this depth. On the gloves, I used Agrax Earth Shade again. I like to try and use the same colors throughout the model, so everything ties into each other. You can see here that I left half of the hand basically black, and it forces your eye to see it as shadow on the finished model. Winry is blonde, and we saw the debacle from the last video when I did blonde hair. I decided to do her hair differently from Trunks though. I start by spraying yellow ochre on each of the hair pieces. This is the first time I'm trying this paint out, as I've been searching for a yellow that covers decently. I can say that this does a pretty good job, and it goes down well. I then grab highlight skin from the Nocturne of Fantasy set and dry brush this on the hair to act as, well, highlights. Next time I'll try white, as I would have liked the highlights to be a touch brighter. To tie everything together, I spray Skeleton Horde, and I use it to give some shading to the hair as well. Let's move on to the skin tones. My brain is on this time, I promise. I didn't even mess up the hair on this one. For my undertones, I try using Warlord Purple from Vallejo again. I spray this on the white parts of my Zenithal highlight. I grab the correct ink this time, which is Naphthol, I think that's how you say it, Naphthol Crimson from Liquitex, and spray that on the black parts. I try blending it a little bit into the purple as well. I also focus it on parts of the body that bend under the armpits and between the muscles. For the skin tone, I start with Flat Flesh from Vallejo. Does it sound like I'm saying fat flesh? I thin this down a lot as I would rather paint more layers than accidentally cover all my undertones. Speaking of undertones, Winry in the anime doesn't really have any undertones, it's just skin tone and shading, but I'm going for a more stylized version of her. However, one layer wasn't enough for the look that I wanted, so I come back for a second one. Now that I have the base skin tone down, I decide to do my highlights next. As I know I'm going to go a bit too far on the torso, I can come back afterwards with some shading. For the highlights, I use basic skin tone from Vallejo. I try to catch the spots where the light would hit, but also spots that I want to focus on or accentuate. Once that's done, I come in with a mix of Nomad Flesh from the Army Painter and red ink to bring back some of that reddish pink color that we lost. Like on her torso, it was looking a bit flat and desaturated. It's looking a lot better now, but still a bit desaturated, so I grab some Imperial Fist Yellow and thin the hell out of it like it's basically all water. Then I spray it all over the model. The highlights got a bit muted, so I come back in with a basic skin tone again, but this time mixed with a little bit of highlight skin. I hit smaller areas than my initial highlight step on this pass though. Next I move on to Edward's automail and the other metallic parts on the model. For Ed's automail, I use plate mail metal from the Army Painter and spray a couple of coats on each. I grab silver from Pro Acryl and use it on the battle damage that's sculpted into the pieces. I also do a little bit of edge highlighting. I will say the automail is the one part that I wish I did differently. The plate mail and silver were too close in color for the damage and highlights to really pop. The issue was I didn't want the base coat of Edward's automail to be any darker, so I'd have to think what I'd do differently. Luckily, it's just a part on the base, so it's not critical to the model. For the telescope on the base and the wrench in Winry's hand, I use Lead Belcher from Citadel. I normally have issues brushing metallic colors as they don't really cover well, but this Lead Belcher is pretty good. I only had to really use one coat and just touch up a few places. I wanted to do some shading for these parts, so I used Nun Oil from Citadel instead of Black Legion as it's not as potent. It's a very subtle shading, which is what I wanted. These parts will already be in shadow since their placement on the base, so I didn't want to go too far. Speaking of Black Legion, I use it on the black portions of Ed's automail foot. I decide to go with Black Legion as a contrast paint consistency makes it easy for me to get the paint where I want, plus I don't have to thin it. For her bandana, I wanted to pop more than the anime and the renders, so I use Creed Camo from Citadel and spray from below for my shadows. I then come in with Mantis Warrior Green from Citadel over the rest of the bandana. I like how vibrant the bandana ended up. I move on to her top. I use German Gray from Vallejo as the base coat. The reason I use gray instead of black is you can't shade black. If the gray is dark enough, it'll read as black when you look at the model as a whole. Ugh. Change your gloves, folks. I fixed this by going back over it with my skin tone colors. For my highlights, I use Neutral Gray from Vallejo. I decide I'm feeling hella spicy, and don't mask the skin. I'm surprised my laziness didn't bite me here. I went a little overboard on the highlights, so I tone it down with Black Legion that I'm using as my shading. Since we're working on the torso now, I might as well get the rest of her hair painted. I use the same yellow ochre as before. For her earrings, I just use silver on them. In the render, her toes are all done up with a French manicure and everything. So I use basic skin tone and highlight skin for the white tips. For the sandals, I wanted them to be made out of leather. I go with Guilliman Flesh from Citadel as my color of choice. Contrast paints have the habit of pooling up, especially on flat surfaces. Normally, I try to avoid this as much as I can. However, this time I'm going to take advantage of this property to get the leather look that I want. The first coat is a little too light, so I do a second coat. We're getting there on the look that I want, but I decide to come back with a little more Guilliman Flesh on select spots to get the variation in color that leather has. Oh hell yeah, usable footage for her face. Hell yeah times 2, I only gotta do one eye. I start with highlight skin for the whites of the eye. From there, I make an oval using black from Vallejo. My brush tip sucks and I don't trust it, so I switch to the nail art brush. I use the same black on her eyelash and eyebrow. The eyelashes and eyebrows are sculpted on, so as long as I don't mess up, it shouldn't be too hard. For her iris, I start with Caldor Sky from Citadel. I paint inside the black oval I did earlier, up to the edge, leaving just a little bit to ring the iris. I didn't film this as I had to get really close and lock in, but I used Lothern Blue from Citadel for the highlight at the bottom of her eye. For the shadow at the top of her eye, I water down the Crag Blue from Citadel a lot, so it just tints the Caldor Sky. I do this a few times until I get it to a shade that I want. It's subtle, as I was a bit scared I would mess up the eye. Next time I think I'm gonna push this a bit further. For some reason I decide to jump to doing her teeth next. I don't know, I think it was because I already had the highlight skin on my wet palette. And with that, we're finished with Winry Rockbell. Let's start putting this model together. On to the glamour shots. Thank you for joining me this far. If you feel like you learned something today, hit that subscribe button. And if you have any tips or tricks, let me know in the comments. Peace.